Excuse me, we're about ready to start, but I need to visit with Representative Freimuller first. Okay, the House will now come to order. It's my pleasure today to introduce Reverend Valerie Hummel LaBounty, and she's a native of Yankton. She's a preacher in the Methodist Church, and she moved up here because God brought her here, she said. And she's going to be followed by Morgan Graham from Vermilion, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Creator God, daily you give us the breath our bodies crave. You give us the energy we need to follow where you've called us to go. Today we ask for your wisdom as we seek to make just decisions for all people. Guide our hearts and minds as we speak and as we make those decisions, so we can glorify you in all that we do here today. It is in your holy name that we pray all of this. Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice job. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Allers, Anderson, Bartles, Barthel, Bartling, Beal, Bordeaux, Bruner, Campbell, Carson, Chase, Clark, Conzett, Dennert, Diedrich, DeSanto, Duval, Freimuller, Glanzer, Goodwin, Gosh, Greenfield, Lana, Haugard, Hawley, Heineman, Holmes, Howard, Hunhoff, Jameson, Jensen, Kevin, Johns, Johnson, Kaiser, Carr, Ketwig, Lake, Lateral, Lesmeister, Livermont, Lust, Marty, May, McCleary, McPherson, Mills, Otten, Peterson, Kent, Peterson, Sioux, Pischke, Qualm, Rasmussen, Reed, Roden, Ring, Rounds, Rosem, Schaefer, Shanefish, Smith, Soley, Steinhauer, Stevens, Tolson, Turbeville, Weesey, Willitson, Wismer, York, Zickman, Speaker Mickelson. Speaker, a quorum is present.
Very good. Approval of the journal.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Chief Clerk of the House has had under consideration the House Journal of the 12th day. All errors, typographical or otherwise, are duly marked in the temporary journal for correction, and we hereby move the adoption of the report. Respectfully submitted, G. Mark Mickelson, Chair.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Reports of standing committees.
The Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources respectfully reports that the HB 1148 do pass. Senate Bill 39 do pass and be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1130 was tabled. Herman Otten, Chair. The Committee on Health and Human Services respectfully reports that SB 88 do pass, SB 75 do pass and be placed on the consent calendar. Wayne H. Steinhauer, Chair. The Committee on Taxation respectfully reports that HB 1143 and 1175 do pass, and HB 1181 was deferred to the 41st day, legislative day. Stephen G. Haugard, Chair. The Committee on Local Government respectfully reports that HB 1131 do pass and be placed on the consent calendar. HB 1092 was deferred to the 41st legislative day. Kristen Consett, Chair. The Committee on Transportation respectfully reports that SB 21 do pass, HB 1113 and SB 22 do pass and be placed on the consent calendar. Mary Duval, Chair. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that HB 1057 was delivered to His Excellency the Governor for his approval at 8:30 a.m. January 30th, 2018. Respectfully submitted, G. Mark Mickelson, Chair. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Office of Engrossing and Enrolling has carefully compared HB 1003, 1006, 1011, 1013, 1019, 1020, 1021, 1040, and 1069, and finds the same correctly enrolled. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that HB 1048, 1049, and 1068 were delivered to His Excellency the Governor for his approval at 10:50 a.m. January 30th, 2018. Respectfully submitted, G. Mark Mickelson, Chair.
Messages.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to return herewith House Bills 1003, 1006, 1011, 1013, 1019, 1020, 1021, 1040, and 1069, which have passed the Senate without change. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to transmit herewith Senate Bills 1962, 86, 90, 94, and SJR 2, which have passed the Senate, and your favorable consideration is respectfully requested. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to inform your honorable body that HB 1001 was lost on second reading and final passage. Respectfully, Kay Johnson, Secretary.
Motions and resolutions.
HCR 1003, a concurrent resolution promoting the resilient and healthy Black Hills Forest through endorsement of the forest management principles identified in Black Hills Resilient Forest Strategy, published December 2017. Representative Johnson moved that HCR 1003 was, as found on page 111 of the House Journal, be adopted.
Discussion on that motion. Representative Johnson.
House Concurrent Resolution 1003 asks that the South Dakota State Legislature to promote a resilient and healthy Black Hills forest. We can do that, ladies and gentlemen, by endorsing the Resilient Forest Strategy that was finalized and published last month and placed on your desks this morning. Here's some history. About 8 years ago, approximately 50 tree guides, tree groups, and government agencies met to coordinate their efforts in mitigating the damages of what was at the time the active mountain pine beetle tree slaughter. We met up about 2 to 3 times per year. Then about 3 years ago, when we saw the mountain pine beetle epidemic waning, the same groups began developing this resilient forest strategy to address post-beetle issues and the impending return of the mountain pine beetle monster. You have a list. You received the list of the organizations, agencies, and individuals who have studied and collaborated and developed the resilient forest strategy. The list includes government agencies at every level: municipal, county, state, tribal, from both Wyoming and South Dakota, and federal. You'll notice it also includes members of the forest products industry, the timber harvest industry, the tourism industry. It includes environmentalists. It includes hunters, anglers, sportsmen's clubs, camping advocates. It includes forest recreationalists, private landowners, state park administrators. It includes urban and rural foresters. It includes public and private arborists. It includes commercial tree care representatives, and ladies and gentlemen, it even includes the National Wild Turkey Federation and the Sierra Club. It's unheard of to see the level of cooperation that has produced this all lands forest health strategy. You know, these are individuals and organizations that seldom see eye to eye. And yet in this current situation, we've all arrived at the mutual determination that something has to be done. And this is an opportunity for the People's House of the state of South Dakota to say, hey, we've got your back, and thank you for the foresight and for managing our Black Hills forests. Now some economic studies. The National Forest Service says that an average of 43% of our forest tourists stay in the state for an average of 4 nights, generating over $400 million annually. They're not coming if the trees are dead. More than 1/3 of the Black Hills forest, some 430,000 of the 1.2 million forested acres, are now everbrowns because of the bug. Those dead trees are now forest fire fuels. Last month, the Legion Lake fire near Custer was the second largest wildfire in recorded Black Hills history, due in part to the aftermath of the infestation. Forest products companies directly employ 1,400 people in the Black Hills area alone, and their salaries contribute more than $120 million back to the state's economy. The mountain pine beetle problem is not over. We know it will return, and it's going to come back in about 10 years. When it does, it will be substantially more severe unless we continue our strategy of active, collaborative, all lands forest management that fosters a healthy and resilient forest. The passage of this resolution today will have no impact on the budget. We're not asking for a dime. What we are asking is that the legislature of the state of South Dakota promote, endorse, and acknowledge the impact that a resilient, healthy, and well-managed Black Hills forest has to the state of South Dakota and its 865,454 residents. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank you for allowing me, the House, the opportunity to pass and press the green button on HCR 1003.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. There wouldn't be a better sponsor of that resolution in this body. Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 1003. All those members in favor vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The members shall proceed to vote. Representative Peterson.
Personal privilege, please.
Granted.
On behalf of Representative Shane Fish and myself, we'd like to welcome to the Capitol today the Armour High School government class, along with their teacher, Caitlin Todd, right up here to our right.
Give us a wave so we know who you are, you folks from Armour.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Smith.
Personal privilege.
Granted.
Members of the House, I'd like to take this time to introduce my mom and dad, who are up right above the speaker, Jay and Sherry Smith. On Sunday, they celebrated 50 years of being married. Just a little background.
Here, here.
They went to Sioux City on the wedding night, and now they go to Pierre. Pretty exciting, Dad. Good job.
And it's all your fault.
Mr. Speaker.
All right, before we do, we're going to finish up the vote here. We've got some of you folks that need to vote. Dietrich, Mills, Peterson, Ring. Madam Clerk, please display the vote. Allers. Representative Allers. We'll get to you in a minute here, Representative Weesey.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 67 yeas, no nays, and 3 excused.
House Concurrent Resolution 1003, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared adopted. As you watch Representative Hummel LaBounty go back and do the Lord's work, tomorrow her husband's going to be here, and he's also a preacher at the Methodist Church. So, just a little trivia for you.
A concurrent resolution, SCR2, a concurrent resolution endorsing the right to work provisions in South Dakota Constitution and in the Labor Management Relations Act that prohibit forced union membership. Representative Jensen moved that SCR2, as found on page 132 of the Senate Journal, be concurred in.
Remarks. Representative Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was brought by now Senator Bolin, Jim Bolin from District 16. As you know, or may know, Representative Bolin spent 8 years in the House and was quite the historian and brings a lot of historical perspective to a lot of the laws that we follow today, and sometimes people wonder why we have those laws, and this resolution gives us a little bit of background. The Senate Concurrent Resolution 2 is a statement supporting Article 5, Section 2 of the South Dakota Constitution and the Labor Management Relations Act of 1947. This section is better known here in South Dakota as a right-to-work law. It's a provision of our Constitution, and it was passed by the people in the mid-1940s. Immediately after World War II, strikes and labor stoppages became very common and often became very violent. Senator Taft and Representative Hartley sponsored a bill which would amend the National Labor Relations Act of the 1930s, and a key component of that bill was Section 14B, which forbade the closed shop and allowed states to outlaw union shop, which required workers to join unions shortly after they began working. It passed by an overwhelming margin in both houses, 308 to 107 and 68 to 24. However, President Truman at that time did veto the bill, and it was overturned decisively by Congress. In fact, our own Senator George McGovern in 1968 wrote, "As you know from my vote in 1966, I favor retention of the 14B of the Taft-Hartley Act. The South Dakota Constitution provision solidifies our support of this Constitution." One section of the bill reads, "Whereas in the 1940s, the legislature approved and sent to the voters an amendment to the South Dakota Constitution establishing a prohibition against forced union membership in the state. And the voters of the state passed the amendment by more than a 2-to-1 margin. And now 24 other states have adopted measures similar or identical to that of the South Dakota Constitution. Again, majorities of both parties in the U.S. Senate and here in South Dakota supported this bill and makes it possible today. The right-to-work concept is an important part of our Constitution, and I urge you to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Wismer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I hate to begrudge Senator Bolin his history lesson. It's a good history lesson, but I'm going to stand today to oppose Senate Joint Resolution number 2. You know, another way to state the language in the particular provision of law that is being discussed here is that it allows freeloaders or non-participators to benefit from the advocacy of others without asking them to share in the cost of that representation. We are a state that struggles daily with a workforce shortage. Why would we want to be here broadcasting our non-worker friendly environment, gloating about the imbalance of power between employers and employees that is enabled by our state laws? This resolution sends the wrong message to our potential workforce. It isn't employers we're missing in this state, it's a workforce. We've chased them away with attitudes such as those expressed in this resolution. We have employers all over the state trying to fill their job openings. We've refused to compete with the rest of the country for our children and grandchildren. Generation after generation, we've sent them out of state to find a better life. And now we're spending millions of tax dollars to educate special niches of employees, and we struggle to come up with other special programs that will encourage them to stay, other than competitive pay and healthy working conditions. What does this resolution say to potential or current employees? What does it say to people who are struggling in their workplace with less than safe working conditions, or who have no recourse to address sexual harassment in their workplace? This resolution says, we don't care about our reputation among the states. It says, we aren't interested in helping workers maintain a safe and fair workplace. And furthermore, we're darn proud that our state laws make it difficult for you to have any recourse within your grasp. In this resolution, we are bragging about working conditions that many workers feel are unfair to them. This resolution may make some employers feel special in this election year, but many current and potential employees are also our audience. They are making decisions about whether or not to take a job in our communities. They are young people who have seen their parents scrape by with both parents working. They are potential workers who have seen their coworkers mistreated with no recourse. If we really understood our workforce problems, I don't think we'd stand for this type of message to the rest of the world. Now, I'm not a natural union ally. I've seen their advantages and disadvantages close to my home communities. But historically, unions are responsible for some very basic worker rights that we take for granted today. 40-hour work weeks, paid holidays, sick leave, redress and appeal procedures. There are bad apples in each and every way of life, both among employers and employees. There are times and industries when a third party does need to intervene on the part of the employees. We should not be spending our legislative time intimidating working families who wish to democratically organize in South Dakota. If we were serious about competing with other states for workers, about making ourselves attractive to workers, about not having so many lonely grandparents in South Dakota, wouldn't we make the effort to make ourselves more attractive to those workers? And wouldn't we be a little more sensitive to the plight of workers who stand alone against an abusive employer? I, for one, will be voting against this message. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final adoption of Senate Concurrent Resolution 2. All those members in favor will vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the member shall proceed to vote. Representative Weezy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, we have a large delegation of Madison and DSU people here today. They've come on a bus this morning and are spending the day with us. They'll be at the Ramkota tonight for a reception also. So would you please give them a warm welcome.
Let's wave if you're from Madison and you're in the crowd today. Give them a wave. Now, I don't think our state liquor laws allow beer on that bus on the way home, okay?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Zickman.
Thank you,
Representative Zickman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, some of you know that I worked for the Associated General Contractors as their president and CEO for 15 years. And it is my pleasure to introduce all the people from the Associated General Contractors, both on the highway heavy side and the commercial contractors. Would you please stand?
Give us a wave if you're from Associated General Contractors, please.
These are the people that build your bridges, highways, roads, buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So they're the ones that keep you running and keep you going. So it's and they're also giving you a free dinner tonight. So don't forget that. Thank you, AGC.
Thank you. All right, Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have in the crowd as well, in the gallery, from Rutland, the government class. So please stand and wave.
Rutland High School.
District 8.
All right, we got to clean up our votes here. Frymuller, Goodwin, Carson, Marty, Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, it's 59 yeas, 9 nays, and 2 excused.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 2, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared adopted. All right. Are we on to, what are we doing next? Consideration of committee reports.
Representative Quam moved that the reports of the standing committees on Agriculture and Natural Resources, on House Bill 1115 as found on page 190 of the House Journal. Also, Committee on Transportation on House Bill 1107 as found on page 191, and House Bill 1116 as found on page 192, and House Bill 1117 as found on page 192 of the House Journal be adopted.
Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. First reading of House bills. The Speaker assigns to Education House Bill 1242, to Judiciary 1243, to State Affairs 1237 and 1239, to Taxation 1238 and 1240, and to Transportation 1241. First reading of Senate bills. So you folks in the audience, every bill that gets drafted gets a committee hearing, and we have to read it twice because we didn't have computers when they wrote the Constitution. This is the first reading, then we send it up to a committee, and if it passes the committee, then it will come down here and be debated. The Speaker assigns to Education Senate Bill 94, to Judiciary Senate Bill 62, to Local Government Senate Bill 90, and to State Affairs Senate Bills 1986 and Senate Joint Resolution number 2. Consent calendar.
Representative Howard requested that HB 1099 be removed from the consent calendar, which request was granted. Representative Frymuller requested that SB 60 be removed from the consent calendar, which request was granted. House Bill 1053 is an act to provide certain earned discharge credits for inmates. Senate Bill 17 is an act to revise certain provisions regarding a division under the Department of Human Services.
The consent calendar, having had its second reading, is up for consideration. Are there any remarks or any questions? All right. Seeing no questions on the consent calendar, the question before the body is final adoption of the consent calendar. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members shall proceed to vote. Representative Rounds, I don't know if you noticed, but Senate Bill 60 was pulled from the consent calendar. It just happened while you were having your arm twisted by the good representative from Kyle. Representative York, granted.
First of all, I'd like to thank all the AARP members that are here today for the wonderful lunch that they served us. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
And secondly, I'd like to recognize a couple of folks from Watertown, Bill and Kathy Zubke. Both are former teachers, and Mr. Zubke is a former Teacher of the Year from Watertown. We're glad to have him in our community, and he is our entrepreneurial fudge maker officially in Watertown.
Well, very good.
Thank you for coming.
They dropped a few notes off up here. There's over 100 folks, so that's a very good representation. We appreciate the lunch that you guys served in the lobby, and it's our pleasure to welcome you here from AARP. I know a number of you were asking about the funding that we do for to pay for the real estate taxes for some of the elderly. That's down our calendar quite a ways. It's Senate Bill 56. And we got about 15 or 20 bills before we get to that. But it's on the calendar for today, and we hope to get to it. And please stop sending me your mail. We need to clean up our vote real quick. Are you on AARP still, Bert? Okay, Representative Beal, Dennert, Gosh, Howgard, Mayo, McCleary, Otten, Jensen, Johns, Roden, Tuberville, and Weesey. Representative Folsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Otten votes aye.
Thank you for the personal privilege. We're honored today to have former Representative Jackie Sly in the back, and if she could stand and everybody give her a wave and welcome back.
Let's give her a warm welcome. Now, I noticed that she's got a red vest on. Are you part of the crowd, part of the group, Representative Sly? All right. Nice to have you with us. She's also the sister of the Majority Leader's secretary. Yeah. Representative Glanzer. Granted.
We have in the gallery today a very distinguished young man who is my only son. And you might know from talking with him, that's a great statement, my only son. He's here representing Northwestern Energy and helping Yankton celebrate their day here at the Capitol. Tom Glanzer.
Well, let's give him a warm welcome. All right, Representative Tuberville. Have you voted? Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted. Yeas were 68, nays 0, excused 2.
The consent calendar, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Second reading of House bills.
House Bill 1008, is an act to revise certain provisions that authorize the Secretary of Transportation to provide for temporary variable speed limits on state highways in the interest of highway safety due to varying weather, road, work, or other conditions.
Mr. Speaker.
House Bill 1008, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Representative Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, members of the body. Today I bring House Bill 1008 at the request of the Department of Transportation and the Department of Public Safety. House Bill 1008 would authorize temporary lowering of the maximum speed limit on interstate highways when appropriate due to weather, such as icy roads, blowing and drifting snow, and reduced visibility conditions. Also, it could be used for traffic congestion in high traffic areas. Wyoming has been successful with this in the past, and Wyoming has seen a reduction of crashes and fatalities by nearly 1/2. Wyoming also experienced a reduction in road closures by 1/3, thereby maintaining mobility in times of adverse weather conditions. Reduced traffic speeds to a safer level reduces the variability of major crashes and fatalities. Normal speeds can be quickly restored when conditions improve. The cost of this would be $1.3 million, and the cost or the funds for this is coming from a Federal Highway Administration grant. There would be 2 locations that they would start with this program. The first one is located from Sturgis to Tilford on I-90. The second is from Brookings to Ward on I-29. This would be done by a series of electronic billboards and speed limit signs that would be available on the interstate, notifying that the speeds are going to be reduced due to whatever traffic measures there might be. And then there would also be speed limit signs on each on-ramp as people enter the interstate in these areas. The funds, again, are going to be $1.3 million, and this grant is contingent on this body and this legislature approving this bill. So I encourage you to pass Bill HB 1008. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? House Bill 1008. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1008. All those members in favor shall vote yes. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Gosh votes no.
Representative Willitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Personal privilege.
Granted.
Greetings to the members of the House of Representatives, the People's House. I've got 2 introductions that I would like to make for you. The first one is my oldest grandson. His name is Ian Glover. He's 11 years old. He's a 5th grader at JFK Elementary in Sioux Falls, where he gets almost all A's. You might, if you've been around for a while, you might recognize his other grandfather, who was Tom Glover, that used to sit in Representative Jensen's seat in 2005 and 2006. So please welcome my grandson, Ian Glover. And Mr. Speaker, if I might indulge with one more.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Speaker, like you, I married way outside my league.
I'm a little surprised you're so comfortable bringing me into that deal.
I've had the opportunity to meet your lovely wife, and we're both guilty of the same thing. But I'd like to introduce my wife, who's sitting right up behind you. This is the love of my life. For 41 and a half years, my wife and my best friend, Suzanne Willitson.
Let's welcome Suzanne. Ian, if you want to come on up here and help me, you're welcome to do so. Who needs to vote? Representative Johnson? I'll give you the arrow, okay, just hang on, you found it there. Not yet, I'll just go.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 52 yeas, 16 nays, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1008, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1066, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the issuance of vehicle license plates and stickers.
House Bill 1066, having had a second reading, is up for final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Duvall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. House Bill 1066 comes to us from the Department of Revenue after a fairly intensive summer of the department working with different county treasurers around the state. Currently, there are 127 different license plates which are available in South Dakota. Of those, 119 are specialty plates. People have to pass very specific criteria to be eligible for these 119 specialty plates. The vast majority of plates are found within the other 8 license plates that we typically would get. So this bill says that these 8 plates will be available at county courthouses for the county treasurer. The other 119 specialty plates will be available through the Department of Revenue, which has to see whether you match the criteria to meet one. If a plate is requested to be mailed out, right now the language in statute is silent on what happens to the mailing fees. What has been the practice is that county treasurers put the mailing fees into the county general fund. The Department of Revenue has been putting those mailing fees into the state motor vehicle fund. This bill specifies that those Department of Revenue mailing fees will indeed go into the state motor vehicle fund, which will then be distributed out to counties and municipalities based on a super complicated formula that's found in statute. And then the third thing this bill does is just really clarify that those 8 plates will indeed be available at county courthouses. County treasurers were surveyed on whether or not they supported this bill, and by an 8-to-1 margin, they do support this bill, and I'm asking you also to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Greenfield. Yep, you need to turn your mic on. There you go. Go ahead and state your question.
I was wondering, who gets the money? What's the normal procedure for getting the money for the specialty plates? Does the county get that, or does that go to the state, or what's been the past and then the future practice on that?
Representative Duvall, you wish to answer that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the best of my knowledge, all the license plate fees go to the county. This bill deals with the extra mailing fees, but license fees go to the counties.
Okay, thank you.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1066. All those members in favor shall vote yes. Those opposed, no. This is a 2/3 vote due to appropriation into a special fund. Madam Clerk, please unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. Representative Lust? Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the members of the body to acknowledge and welcome the president of the School of Mines, who is on the job for less than a month so far, President Jim Rankin.
Stand up and give us a wave. Representative McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself, I would like us to welcome the South Dakota Credit Union professionals and volunteers to the House chamber today. They represent credit unions of the Dakotas, which serve 33 federally chartered credit unions and approximately 270,000 credit union members owned by South Dakota, owners of South Dakota credit unions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome them to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Representatives Bruner, Conzett, Otten, and Rasmussen.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote. Well, there's a reason we had to keep it off consent.
Mr. Speaker, there were 67 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1066, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill number 1012, an act to revise certain provisions regarding political party status and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1012, having had its second reading, is up for final consideration and debate. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Haugard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1012 comes to us via the Committee on Local Government at the request of the State Board of Elections, and it was heard in State Affairs recently and received unanimous support there. And the gist of the bill is relatively straightforward, is to identify a political party, and it moves the recognition date back to the 2014 general election so that those political parties who had a statewide candidate and received at least 2.5% of the vote would be considered for the next cycle, that they would still be considered a political party. So it identifies that it can happen in either of the 2 previous general election cycles. So that would allow them to avoid the necessity of going back out and getting another, I think it's somewhere around 7,000 signatures at least to be considered on a ballot. So that's the intent of the bill, and I'd encourage the House to support this and pass it along. Thank you.
Further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1012. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. This is a 2/3 vote due to an emergency clause. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members shall proceed to vote.
Rounds votes aye.
Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Personal privilege.
Granted.
Well, I have three special people up in the audience here in the gallery. First of all, April Frost and Brenda Johnson. Brenda is my receptionist in my dental office, so nobody's at home right now. No, I'm just kidding. And then my wife, Libby. So please welcome them. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Sounds like maybe we have a dentist of the day, but I haven't introduced the doctor of the day. Is Dr. Alan Nord here? That right here in the back, folks, if you turn around, Dr. Nord is sponsored by the State Medical Association. He's a family medicine physician in Rapid City. He's a medical degree graduate from the University of Minnesota, and he completed his residency at the Eisenhower Army Medical Center in Augusta, Georgia, and he served in the U.S. Army prior to beginning practicing family medicine in Rapid City in 1980. Would you please welcome our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Alan Nord. Representative Rounds. Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sitting in the back,
behind the pillar. I can't see him back there, but he's one of the hundreds that attempted to mentor me in my early years here. He's from a neighboring district, former Representative Kent Junkie.
Kent, give us a wave. It's nice to see you. There he is in the back. Please welcome Representative Junkie.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 68 yeas, no nays, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1012, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1096 is an act to provide jurisdiction to magistrate judges for HOPE probation programs and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1096, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Barthel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. This bill is brought to us by the Chief Justice. It deals with the HOPE program, which is an acronym for a drug program for high-intensity drug offenders, felony drug offenders. It's similar to the 24/7 program that's used for alcohol offenders. It's only been in existence for a couple of years, but they've had some great success with it. It's been a good program, but currently the way it's written, it has to be overseen by a circuit court judge. What this bill will do will allow a magistrate judge to oversee it when there isn't a circuit judge available, especially would be helpful in some of the rural areas where they don't have access all the time to a circuit court judge. So good program, and I would consider it worthy of your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? House Bill 1096. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1096. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed shall vote no. This is a 2/3 vote due to an emergency clause. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The members shall proceed to vote. Representative Howard.
Personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. I just want to everyone to know my better half is here today. Mark, for those who don't know, he's originally from Blunt, not too far from here. His parents, Rick and Kay Howard. But he's over here helping his sister with some stuff, so he's here today.
Please welcome Mark Howard.
Ladder, all votes aye. Representative Bordeaux, Dietrich, Holmes, Qualm, Marty. Qualm votes aye. Dietrich votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 68 yeas, 0 nays, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1096, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1104 is an act to revise certain provisions regarding the arrest of certain victims of domestic abuse.
House Bill 1104, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable members
of the House. The bill I have before you here, it's kind of a neat one about how a citizen legislature works. As most of you know, I'm a certified law enforcement officer. Excuse me. And every couple of years we have to do domestic violence training. And this past year, when I took that domestic violence training, the trainer, Deputy State's Attorney out of Pennington County, had addressed an issue with this law. Because right now, the way the law is if a victim of domestic violence, so the officer shows up and meets with the one who just got beat up, if the victim is caring for a child, then the officer does not have to arrest that victim if they have a nonviolent misdemeanor warrant. Now, something the trainer pointed out to me and that I learned in the class is, why is that the only exception? Why can the victim with a nonviolent misdemeanor warrant just not be arrested at all? Why do we have this exception in there? Why aren't we protecting the victims a little bit more? So I got working with this Deputy State's Attorney and then brought in the Domestic Violence Network folks, and we brought this bill that you have in front of you. And you'll see in Section 1, Subsection 3, we're just striking the language of the child to plainly say that if you are the victim of domestic violence and you have a nonviolent misdemeanor warrant, the officer does not have to arrest you. The idea being, one, in smaller areas, we don't want to put the victim in the same cop car with the person who just beat him up. Two, we don't want to drive them to the small county jail where they both sit in the same booking room and then are put in jail. The idea here is that we want victims, even if they have a nonviolent misdemeanor warrant, to call 911 when they're a victim. I guess that's about it. 2 minutes, that's not too bad. I'll stand by for questions. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Further remarks? Any questions for Representative Kaiser? Seeing none. Question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1104. All those members in favor shall vote yes. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members shall proceed to vote.
Representatives Lake, Latrell, McCleary, Peterson, Sue. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, the vote is 68 yeas, no nays, 2 excused.
House Bill 1104, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title shall be deemed approved.
House Bill 1078 is an act to revise certain provisions regarding the removal of security freezes.
House Bill 1078, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Steinauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is really a simple bill. I think people's credit reports have been on your mind a lot this year, especially with the issues with Equifax. South Dakota is one of just a handful of states where if you go to the deliberation and the work of putting a credit freeze on, you have to remember 7 years later that credit freeze will lapse. It's not permanent until you ask for it to be removed. When you start to pick up a few gray hairs, I do, it's a good chance you might forget in 7 years. So what this does is make credit freezes permanent until you ask for them to be removed. Please vote green.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1078. All those members in favor shall vote yes. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The members shall proceed to vote. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery today, we have a visit from 3M in Brookings, and I'd like to introduce the plant manager, Jim Fay. Jim is a return trip back to Brookings. He spent time earlier at 3M, and now he's actually going to retire here in a few months, and he's going to retire to Brookings, so we get to keep him from Minnesota in South Dakota. 3M is a very important part of the Brookings economy. They now employ over 1,000 people in that plant. So please welcome Jim Fay and the rest of the people from 3M.
May votes aye. Representatives Gosh, Johnson, Carr, Lake, Sue Peterson, Roden. Gosh votes aye.
You guys that, if you run into those 3M people later, ask them why they opened that plant in Brookings. It's a pretty good story. Or Aberdeen. See if, I'm sure you guys know.
Representative Roden. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 68 yeas, no nays, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1078, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1093 is an act to authorize certain insurance transactions and policies in a language other than English.
Friendly. Okay, House Bill 1093, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment.
Representative Johnson. Is that Amendment 1093WA?
Well, it's 1093 Whiskey Alpha.
Representative Willitson, did you want to talk? All right. Has it been distributed?
Yes.
Do you wish to move it at this time?
Absolutely.
All right, go ahead and discuss your amendment.
The amendment simply clarifies the language. In listening to this at the House Commerce Committee hearing, testimony after testimony said that what they wanted this thing to say was that the controlling version of any insurance policy offered in South Dakota shall be the English version. I think this is a very good bill with that amendment.
Thank you. Further remarks on Amendment 1093WA? Representative Willitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I would consider this a friendly amendment, and I'd like to thank Representative Johnson for bringing it forward. After we took a look at the amendment, we realized that it did make the bill read a lot better, and it made our point as far as what we wanted to do, so I'd encourage you to pass the amendment.
Very good. Any further remarks on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is passage of Amendment 1093WA. All those members in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment carries. We're now on 1093 as amended. Representative Willitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members of the House, I'd like to explain a little bit about House Bill 1093 because it's got 2 goals that we're trying to accomplish here. The first goal is we would like to encourage more people in South Dakota to purchase insurance, in particular auto insurance. And the second goal is that we want to send a clear message that if there is a dispute about a multi-language policy, that it's the English version that will apply in settling that dispute. I've told most of you numerous times that I've been in the insurance business since 1982. Well, one of the worst calls I can get is when one of my insureds calls and says, "Hey, Mark, I was in an accident," and I go, "Oh no, was there anybody hurt?" And most of the time they're able to answer, "No, there was nobody hurt." And I'd say, "Okay, well, tell me what happened." And they'll say, "Well, I was just sitting at the stoplight waiting for the light to change, and this guy come up from behind me and wasn't paying attention, plowed right into the back of me." My next question is then, does the other person have insurance? And too often, the answer to that question is no, they don't have insurance. That creates an awful lot of hardship for my insured and a lot of work, quite frankly. So what do I mean by we're encouraging people to purchase insurance? Well, when you think about it, if we have a legal immigrant into South Dakota, of which there are many, they don't always understand about all our customs and everything, in spite of the things that the people sponsoring them in the country try to help them with. But if they could read an insurance policy in their own language, it's going to be easier for them to understand. It's going to be easier for them to understand what it's going to do for them. And it's going to be easier for them to understand why they need to keep paying the premiums and keep the policy up. So that's what I mean. We've done a number of bills over the years on trying to encourage people to meet the financial responsibility requirements of our state. And I think the first goal of this particular bill is to do just that, and I think it will accomplish that. The second goal, we want to convey a clear message that if an insurance company prints policies in languages other than English, and there's a dispute that goes to court, that the courts use the English language version to solve the dispute. Now, this language is all contained in the policies, both the English and any other language policies, so that message is clear. In addition, at the end of the bill, there's a section to cover the fair trade practices that says that nothing in this bill is to go contrary to the fair trade practices, which means that insurance companies are going to need to publish these policies on a good faith basis and a good make sure that the translations are as best that they can be. One of the questions that came up in the committee was also, well, do they do this now? What kind of thing? And so we did some research. Right now, health insurance policies are mandated by the federal government to be translated into other languages. So if you're buying health insurance and you speak Spanish, you can go to your agent and you can request a Spanish version of that policy. So that type of thing is being done now.
Reed yields.
Thank you, Representative Reed. The last thing that I'd like to say is that we're working on accomplishing these two goals: to get more people to purchase insurance products in South Dakota because they'll be able to understand them and understand what they do for them, and that we send that second message that says if there's a dispute, that dispute will be settled by the English language version of the policy. So I'd hope you to join me in supporting House Bill 1093. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Freimuller?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my understanding that there's over 107 languages spoken in the Sioux Falls area. And I'm just wondering how much it's going to cost these insurance companies to comply. When people come to this country, they're supposed to assimilate into our country. It's great that they bring all their different customs and the different things they add to us. But at what point do we stop saying, I'm sorry, we can't afford to do it in all these languages? Does it put an undue burden on all of these insurance companies? And where is it their responsibility to start complying with some of our customs? Thank you.
Well, not really directed. I'm going to let Representative Willitson answer that in his closing remarks. Anyone else want to say anything? Representative Rounds?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I was going to get up and kind of talk down that line, but I'll let Representative Willitson directly answer that question. This is not a mandate. I'm going to repeat it. This is not a mandate. This allows the insurance companies, if they wish to do this, they print these policies in a different language if they wish to do so. This is more of a marketing tool used by the insurance companies. They spend money on these commercials where a caveman can do it. You've seen those commercials the insurance companies do. This is their way of marketing to people who are new to the country and may not know the language that well. It allows them to have a tool so they can sit down with them and say, here, we got an automobile policy in language that you can understand. We've heard testimony, or we heard discussion in the committee of an agent that, had people come in and work with they had a translator with them as they came in to buy their insurance. They're going to pay that expense with or without this. This is not a mandate. It allows the companies, if they wish, to market their policies to people who aren't really proficient in English, to market them a policy. They don't have to do it in 107 languages. They can do it in 5. They can do it in 2. They can keep them in English if they wish. It gives them another tool in which to sell their policies, and then we go on to what the good representative from Minnehaha County was talking about. More people buying insurance policies because they understand them. I ask you to support the bill. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Haugard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are a few things I'd like to address. My grandparents came here directly from Denmark, so when they got here, they couldn't speak English. And my concern here is this allows for a parallel culture, really. And I'm in kind of an awkward position today because my daughter-in-law is seated right up here, whose parents are both from Guatemala. And the concern that I have is if we accommodate the languages of other cultures, we set up, as I say, something of a parallel culture that's not consistent with assimilating fully into the American culture. Another thing is the fact that most English-speaking people do not read their insurance contracts anyway. So for us to say that we need to have this in another language, I think is not apt. Most people involved in the sales of insurance, for example, a friend of mine who has a large contingent of Hispanic clients, she makes sure they understand the policies. She makes sure that the staff she has are able to translate and adequately explain the policy provisions, and so they address it in that fashion. And like I say, if you accommodate other cultures coming in, whether it's Hispanic or any other culture, to the extent that we're going to set up contracts in separate languages, I think we just continue to degrade the American culture that we have, and it discourages people from assimilating into the American culture. And I think this is the wrong direction for us to go. So I would encourage you to vote no on this bill. I understand the idea that it's providing a base of the English language is that which you rely on. But I think we also need to kind of keep our own feet to the fire that this is the American culture, that we have a responsibility to assimilate and adapt to this culture, and therefore I think we should vote no on this particular bill. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Steinauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all due respect to my seatmate, and I do respect him, my grandparents came from Germany, and I can't imagine sitting down and trying to understand a policy. We rely on, I guess, the terms producers to help explain a policy to us. But if you want to ask for a little more detail, I cannot imagine taking a look at the legal mumbo-jumbo in an insurance contract in a language I don't speak. If we pass this bill, here's what happens. We mandate that the official language for insurance policies is English. I can't imagine you guys are opposed to that. We have a law in the books that says you have to have car insurance. All we're doing is making it easier for the person getting insurance to understand their policy. The official language would be English. And again, put yourself in their shoes. We've got way too many people driving around without insurance. Let's make it easier for them to understand and buy insurance. When it comes to the cost, it's an option. Insurance companies are probably going to adapt a policy that they've got for Arizona or another state for South Dakota. It's not going to be significant, but they should get to decide how much money they want to spend on marketing. It's nothing that we are mandating in this law. All we're doing is saying that English is the official language for an insurance policy. Thank you.
Further remarks? Go Representative Goodwin, then McCleary.
I agree with good representative from Sioux Falls 2 times ago. When you come to this country, we expect you to assimilate into our culture and do our customs and courtesies as well as our written language, which is English. To say that somebody from a foreign country is going to buy insurance just because it's in his language, yes or no, I don't agree with that. He's going to buy it, he's going to buy it. It's about time he starts picking up our language and assimilating into our culture. So I'm going to vote no on this bill.
Representative McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As being a part of the Commerce and Energy, I want to commend the representative from Sioux Falls and those within the insurance. In my opinion, it's maybe just high time. You go and buy a leaf blower, you buy a generator, you buy a toaster, it's in another language. You go and get your prescription from the pharmacist, it's in another language because we have so many of those people that need to actually read that. They don't learn this overnight. I'm sorry. It takes time, sometimes for 2 years. So I'm voting green. I would ask that you vote green on this also. Thank you.
Any further remarks? Closing remarks, Representative Willitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the House for this thoughtful debate on this subject. When I was circulating this bill for signatures, the only comment that I had against this bill was, this is America. We speak English. If you can't speak English, then get out. Well, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. The United States of America has been a melting pot for people from all around the world since we started. So really? This bill is not a statement about if you can't speak English, then get out. It doesn't have anything to do with that. This bill is trying to accomplish 2 objectives. We're trying to get more people in our state insured. And we're trying to, as my friend from Minnehaha County said, it does have a mandate because we're mandating to the courts that if there's a dispute, the dispute is solved in English. Sorry. I wanted to also, talk a little bit about the cost, because that was brought up as far as, well, this is costing us money. The insurance company has to print all these policies, etc. Insurance companies are in business to sell policies. A part of their budget is already set aside for sales brochures and materials and so on. The insurance companies are already spending this money. Doesn't make a hill of beans to them if they print it in English or if they print it in Spanish or if they print it in Lakota. they're in business to sell policies. And if they can help their customers by understanding what they're buying and sell more policies, then it's a win-win. So please concentrate on the two goals that this bill is trying to accomplish: to get more people in South Dakota insured and to send a clear message that English is the language in the event of the dispute. Please join me in voting green. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1093. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members shall proceed to vote. And this is House Bill 1093 as amended.
Gosh votes aye. Duval votes aye. Representative Pischke. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 57 yeas, 11 nays, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1093, as amended, having received the majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. A little louder, a little louder. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1088 is an act to revise the consignment sales requirements for dealers of motorcycles, off-road vehicles, snowmobiles, boats, and boat trailers.
This one looks like a real talker. House Bill 1088, having had its second reading, is up for consideration. Final remarks. Representative Beal.
Oh, no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to thank you for bringing back my speech, whoever it was in here, because it was a little bit unnerving for a little bit. But I'll continue. Representatives of the people of the great state of South Dakota, I bring to you for consideration House Bill 1088. This bill, as proposed, will modify the existing consignment sales requirements pertaining to motorcycles, off-road vehicles, snowmobiles, boats, and boat trailers. It simply allows licensed dealers to offer for sale on consignment these vehicles from customers who reside in states that share a border with South Dakota. This bill seeks to level the playing field for dealers who are facing increasing pressure from out-of-state private party sales on Craigslist and Facebook. This will also put into place procedures that will help protect buyers and sellers from potential scams. It was crafted with input from power sports dealers, boat dealers, the South Dakota Department of Motor Vehicles, and the South Dakota Automobile Dealers Association. I think I've said enough. I've got more. But thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll sit down.
I'm sure we can cover the rest of that in Q&A. Further remarks? Representative Latterell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the sponsor.
Go ahead and state your question.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if I heard somewhere in there Beal distributors or automobile distributors. I couldn't quite tell what you were saying. Is this affecting your business particularly?
Representative Beal, you want to answer that?
I will answer that question, Speaker. To the great representative from Minnehaha County or Lincoln County, I believe it is Lincoln. listen better next time. It had nothing to do. And I won't say dilly, dilly, dilly either.
All right, I think that was a no. And I think this is a one dilly chamber, isn't it? All right. Any further remarks? House Bill 1088. Seeing none. Question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1088. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote. Representative Haggard.
Personal privilege.
Granted.
I'd like to introduce, I'm trying to match up with Representative Willidson's remarks about my lovely and beautiful wife of 40 plus years, not 41 plus years, but 40 plus years, my wife Mary, seated in the gallery to my left here, and my daughter-in-law Carolina and my son Andrew. They're here visiting as they're passing through on their way back from living out in Washington for a few months where they worked on a rotating basis and as surgical techs, and they're coming back to this area. So please welcome them.
They're here. Welcome. Nice to have you with us. Thanks for being here. All right, who hasn't voted?
Representative Johnson.
Oh, don't dare say that last one.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Representative Rounds? Oh, Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Oops.
Lateral votes aye.
Mr. Speaker, there were 67 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 excused.
All right, yeah, Representative Lateral? Lateral votes aye. You just changed that in the journal. Representative Rounds, did you have something? Yeah.
Can we move to reconsider how this vote passed?
Do you wish to give intent to reconsider?
I give my intent to reconsider how this vote passed.
Well, you want to go ahead and withdraw that?
I'll withdraw my intent.
All right, thank you, Representative Rounds. House Bill 1088, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1082 is an act to revise certain provisions regarding licensure for the lending of money.
House Bill 1082, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Steinhauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, a fairly simple bill. What we're attempting to do here is if you're a rule follower, we're going to try and make you feel a little more comfortable. When you look at the regulations related to banking and lending of money, there's a specific definition for being in the business of lending money. And last year it was brought to my attention that if you are selling an asset, let's take a piece of farm equipment, or a small business, might be a dental office, if you sell it on a contract for deed or seller financing, technically you need to register with the Division of Banking as a lender. Also, if you decide to loan some of your close relatives some money, you need to register with the Division of Banking. Now here's the good news, they aren't chasing you down right now. But what we do lives on. In a year from now, we're going to have a new administration in the governor's office. Don't know who it is, or 8 years from now, the Division of Banking might choose to enforce this. I think it's classic government overreach. So what this bill does is exempt you from being a lender of money if you loan money to a family member or you're selling an asset on a contract for deed. I'll stand by for questions.
Further remarks? House Bill 1082. Anyone else have anything to say on this? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage, House Bill 1082. All those members in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Holmes votes aye. Representative Jameson, Carr. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there's 68 yeas and 0 nays and 2 excused.
House Bill 1082, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1094 is an act to revise certain provisions regarding limitations on licensees engaged in the business of making loans.
House Bill 1094, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Bartles.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Fine members of the House. I'm bringing this bill on behalf of a constituent to rectify an unintentional consequence, I think, of IM 21, which outlawed payday lending in the state of South Dakota. Last year during the session, we crafted and passed the exemption in Section 1 of the bill that included an exemption for business or commercial loans made from a lot of the provisions of IM 21. And it left out agriculture, which is the #1 industry in South Dakota. So I'm inserting agriculture into that list to include them in that narrowly crafted exclusion. And then the other thing Section 2 does, under IM 21, it limited the charges and interest, all charges, any charge at all, to 36%. Well, there's always a charge if a debt goes into collection, and they had the right before to collect their attorney's fees back. And I was trying to offer attorney fees to this narrow exemption again, but the Division of Banking and the proponents of IM 21 said, no, we should actually expand that to all lenders, that if they have to have attorneys, have to do a collection on the bill, they should have the right to recover their reasonable attorney fees. So now it'll apply to all 376 licensees, I believe. And I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Further remarks? House Bill 1094. Seeing no further remarks, question for the body's final passage of House Bill 1094. All those members in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Peel votes aye. Representatives Hunhoff and Lateral. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 67 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1094, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1045 is an act to transfer funds from the Budget Reserve Fund to support state aid to education and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1045, having had second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. This is probably an annual bill, or it has been recently, and it's not in its final form. What this does is takes, as the bill says, $7.2 million from the reserve fund and puts it back into the general fund. That's the amount that we're over our 10%. You know, we try and maintain this 10% level. At the end of fiscal year 17, that's what we had in excess, and so now that money is available to be spent on current operations, and so we have to move it from the reserve back into the general fund. Now, that amount will change, and so this bill, we got to keep it alive because of crossover day and all of that, so we got to keep it alive. We'll send it over to the Senate, and then right towards the end of session, that number will be adjusted after we amend the current year's budget. There'll be a separate bill, I think it's 1044, that amends the current year budget. Once we know that number, then we can come back in and readjust. So at this point, all we're doing is keeping the bill alive and sending it across to the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1045. All those members in favor will vote yes. All those opposed, no. This is a 2/3 vote. It's a special appropriation and an emergency. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the member shall proceed to vote.
Representative Marty, Representative Stevens, Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are 66 yeas, 1 nay, and 3 excused.
House Bill 1045, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1064 is an act to expand the options for the beneficial disposition or use of certain real estate located in Minnehaha County, to make certain appropriations and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1064, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks? Representative Allers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. If you remember last year, we had House Bill 1210, which was a bill that was hoghouse and appropriations to sell the property at the South Dakota School for the Deaf. And if you remember, I stood in opposition to that, primarily because we didn't have enough information to make an educated decision on that issue at the time. Thankfully, the Board of Regents felt the same way, and during this past interim or summer, the Board of Regents conducted meetings at the South Dakota School for the Deaf, including legislative members of the legislature and other stakeholders in the South Dakota School for the Deaf. They hired an architectural engineer to take a look at the building and see what possible uses we could have for SDSD. And what they had discovered at the current time is that selling that facility was not necessarily the most affordable means and the best approach for the South Dakota School for the Deaf at the time. So what they are doing this year in House Bill 1064 is amending the 2017 legislation and encouraging the sale of all or any portion of this historic facility in Sioux Falls. It amends it 2 ways. It permits property exchanges, commercial leases, in addition to property sales, and it differentiates between trust and non-trust campus property. Currently, where the building set on the campus is still held in trust and cannot be merely sold and have the money put in the general fund. It has to either be put into the trust, which is held in school and public lands, or it needs to be traded for a similar property and value. So by means of any other auction or by appropriating the net proceeds of that sale for the capital operating expenses. It also amends the existing statute to provide clear differentiation between the sale of trust and the sale of non-trust land, to provide assurance that any commercial lease income realized from the trust land will be paid out to SDSD, and to authorize the Board of Regents to undertake the commercial lease of portions of the building that SDSD continues to occupy. Currently, we're able to lease within other state agencies. USD and SDSU Extension Services are currently located in that facility. But in order to lease commercially outside of state government, we need this permission that is expressed in House Bill 1064. Recognizing that the Board of Regents may decide to continue to operate SD from its current facilities, to lease portions of those facilities, and to sell a portion of the non-trust land in order to finance certain improvements or repairs, House Bill 1064 authorizes such activities and appropriates the net proceeds or rentals to the Board of Regents to support capital and operating expenditures. I encourage your green vote on this, and so does the Board of Regents. Thank you.
Further remarks? Representative Ott.
Question for the sponsor, please.
Go ahead and state your question.
My question is just pertaining to Section 6 in there, where I see the Board of Regents may be undertaking some renovations for garages and audiology laboratory services. I'm looking for some assurances, I guess, that there will still be some function for the school of the deaf on those facilities yet. I mean, so are they going to be making improvements to that facility for the deaf community?
Representative Allers, do you wish to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question, Representative. Currently, the South Dakota School for the Deaf does operate there. They do hold classes and different seminars. They have summer courses that go on. What you're referring to with the garages and stuff like that, they have audiology trucks that they go out when they do their services off campus. They don't currently have the facilities to properly house that equipment, and that's probably the piece that which you're referring to. And basically, they would build reconstruct one of the current facilities or add storage to that facility so that they can house those trucks and make sure that they're well maintained and cared for.
Representative Otten, the floor is yours. Representative Allers, I have a question. Under this bill, does the Board of Regents continue to have the authority to sell the entire school, should they so choose?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the question. Yes, they do.
Thank you. I'd ask one more follow-up question. How many students attend school at School for the Deaf?
That physically attend the school now, I don't have an exact number. Some of it's based on the summer classes and how many students they have sign up. But the South Dakota School for the Deaf does serve about a little more than 540 students currently.
Very good.
Statewide.
Thank you, Representative Allers. Any further remarks? House Bill 1064. Seeing none, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1064. All those members in favor shall vote yes. All those opposed, no. This is a 2/3 vote due to the emergency and the appropriations. The clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the members shall proceed to vote.
Representatives Carr, Lateral, Mills, Otten, Palm. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 63 yeas, 5 nays, and 2 excused.
House Bill 1064, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1098 is an act to make an appropriation from the Water and Environment Fund to its revolving fund subfunds for various water and environmental purposes, and to declare an emergency.
House Bill 1098, having had second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My fellow representatives, this is the annual omnibus water funding bill. This has no general funds in this bill. So it's a simple bill. If you like clean, good drinking water, responsible handling of waste and solid waste in a way that's responsible to the environment, you'll vote yes. And I'll just share a few details with you. Again, this is an annual bill going back to the 1992-93 legislature. They established this funding source to handle water and the environment fund. So it dedicates funds to water, wastewater, and solid waste projects. It's developed through the state water planning process that ends with a public meeting that's conducted by the Board of Water and Natural Resources. This is fully consistent with the board's funding recommendations and makes the following appropriations for this year's bill. In Section 1, $7.5 million is provided to consolidated grants and loans for drinking water, wastewater, and watershed projects on the State Water Facilities Plan. In Section 2, there's $2.5 million for solid waste disposal and recycling projects. In Sections 3 and 4, there's $1.15 million of expenditure authority for Clean Water State Revolving Fund programs, loan fees, to provide water quality grants for wastewater and watershed projects, engineering and rate studies for small systems, and technical assistance for wastewater systems. And finally, in Sections 5 through 7, there's $1.85 million of expenditure authority for drinking water, state revolving fund programs, loan fees, and federal funds to provide construction for drinking water projects, engineering, rate studies for small systems, and technical assistance for drinking water systems. This omnibus water funding bill has a long history of being successful in helping local projects sponsor wastewater, solid waste projects, and provide good drinking water for our people. It's good for the environment. It's good for the state of South Dakota. And I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1098. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. This is a 2/3 vote due to the emergency clause and the special appropriation. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Roden votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 68 yeas, no nays, 2 excused.
Nice job, Representative Carr. House Bill 1098, having received the 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved.
House Bill 1076, an act to authorize townships to use a tax levy for emergency medical services.
House Bill 1076, having had a second reading, is up for consideration and final debate. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Haggard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1076 is not a mandate. It simply allows for the townships more local control, more local responsibility, allows for townships to dip into the potential for a levy if they want to expand their services for what's already allowed, fire protection expenses. They can expand it and also allow for expenses for emergency medical services. And each year we seem to have bills in regard to emergency medical services or ambulance services and that sort of thing. And oftentimes you'll hear from an individual from the Kimball area who is a devoted volunteer, and I think that type of emergency medical service, as well as one that's local to us at Renner, they provide a great service. It's just outside of municipalities or larger municipalities, and it's very important to have those ambulance services available. This is, like I say, it's not a mandate. It does allow the township to receive some funding to support these services. It also allows townships to essentially collaborate with other municipalities that might be nearby and work toward a reasonable resolution or a reasonable way to cover those services that are needed. So that's what the bill does. It's outside of the scope of, as it says, Section 10.12.28, which is the tax levy for other purposes. This allows for township expenses and just expands it to emergency medical services. And I'd encourage your support of this. I think you'd find in most of the smaller regions that they try to provide ambulance services, and I think most of them end up being volunteer services, and oftentimes they need some assistance to actually purchase the equipment. So I'd encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, House Bill 1076. Representative Allers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I believe this is our last House bill today, and I'm glad you saved it the best for last. And to even prove that, it's the first time I've ever had someone else get up and talk about my bill. And it happens to be a Republican, so you know that this is a great bill. There's nothing left for me to say.
How in the world did that happen? You're usually not so soft-spoken, Representative Allers. My apologies.
It's great.
Yes.
I mean, I can't ask for a bigger endorsement than this. So, hey, you heard the man. Vote green.
Hey, sounds like we need to get an extra chair in our House caucus room, doesn't it? All right. Further remarks. House Bill 1076. All right, seeing none. Question before the body is final passage of House Bill 1076. All those members in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed, no. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The member shall proceed to vote.
Gosh votes aye.
Oh, yes. Okay, if that's all right, I'm going to do a couple things before I get there.
Representative Paul.
Totally didn't. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Madam Clerk, please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 66 yeas, 1 nay, and 3 excused.
House Bill 1076, having received the majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed approved. There being no objection, that concludes the second reading of House bills. The Speaker is going to reassign House Bill 1188 from House Ed to Government Operations and Audit Committee. Any objections to that? Now, we're at a little break here, so does any sitting member on the floor, is any sitting member that's paying attention to what I'm saying have a birthday today? Is it anyone's birthday today, sitting on the floor? Representative Tolson, do you see anyone behind you that's doing anything?
Let me look around. I see. Oh, yeah, hiding right here behind her desk, Representative Greenfield.
Should she stand up so we can see her better?
There she is. She's been hiding. Would you like to sing happy birthday?
That'd be awesome.
Would everybody please stand? Here we go. We'll do a Lawrence Welk and a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lana. Happy birthday to you.
Mr. Speaker, personal privilege. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
If my little Gavin and Shayla are watching TV, they sent me this birthday bouquet of flowers, and I just want to say thank you. Also, in honor of my birthday, there's 2 people that are not here in this chamber that I dearly love. And so these are my little traveling buddies to remind me of them today. And I hope if they're watching that they know that I am hoping that they'll get well and be able to come back very soon. Thank you.
Happy birthday. We'll now move on to the second reading of Senate bills.
Senate Bill 27 is an act to make an appropriation from the Coordinated Natural Resources Conservation Fund to the State Conservation Commission and to declare an emergency.
Senate Bill 27 having had its second reading, and due to this being an appropriation, it requires a 2/3 vote. Are there any remarks on Senate Bill 27 having had its second reading? It's up for consideration and final passage. Any remarks? Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. This bill is simply an authorization that the State Conservation Commission can spend the funds that are deposited annually into the Coordinated Natural Resources Conservation Fund. The State Conservation Commission approves these projects sponsored by local conservation districts to help landowners implement projects and to improve natural resources. Every dollar invested by the state has been matched by about $3.61 in other funds to carry out these projects. I once again want to stress that this is not an appropriations bill. This is just authorizing the spending of the funds that are deposited into that project every year of about $500,000. Most of these projects, the purpose of these is to improve the water quality, the soil health, recreation opportunities, and the wild habitat on a local level. Since its inception in 1993, there's been approximately 550 projects, and in every single one of your soil conservation districts out there, which are the same as the borders of your county. And we've sent back about $20 million plus, and after the match, so far in those years, it's funded just about $75 million worth of projects back at the local level. So it's been a very, very successful project, and I would hope that you would continue to support it by voting yes.
Thank you very much, Representative Lake. Are there any further comments? Any further comments? This does have an emergency provision, so it does require a 2/3 vote. Hearing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 27. Those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. The members will proceed to vote.
Allers votes aye. Dennert votes aye. Zickman votes aye. Got that one. Somebody else. Frymuller votes aye. May votes aye. Heineman votes aye. Representative Chase. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 68 nays, 68 yeas, no nays, and 2 excused.
Senate Bill 27, having received a majority vote of the members elect and a 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Are there any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Bill 40 is an act to authorize the transfer of certain surplus real estate in Rapid City to the Ellsworth Development Authority and to declare an emergency.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here to ask you to support this bill today. This bill takes care of a couple of issues that we have. The first, Western Dakota Technical Institute ended up with a building that they were no longer using. It's a 100,000 square foot facility. According to the original agreement between them and the state, it reverts back to the state for the cost of $1. So the state now owns this building for $1. We also have the issue out of the base. We have an accident potential zone at the end of one of our runways that the South Dakota Ellsworth Development Authority has been working for many years to try and clear this accident, APZ, accident potential zone, with no success. But now this bill provides us an opportunity to do this. So this bill would transfer that building over to South Dakota Ellsworth Development Authority and allow them to use that building in negotiations with the owner of this property to clear that APZ. So it would help Ellsworth in the long run. It gets rid of a building that we would no longer have to pay for the maintenance for. We have a company, there will be a company moving into that building, so we have a company, employees working in South Dakota. The property at the end of the runway will also stay on the tax rolls, so we will have a perpetual easement, but they will still pay property taxes on it. So for those of you who are unaware, Ellsworth is our second largest employer in the state. They contribute to our economy. Their payroll is over $230 million. That's just their payroll. So they have over 3,000 active duty. If you include the civilians and dependents, they're over 5,000. They opened for business in 1942 as Rapid City Army Air Base. The very first plane that they had there was the B-17 Flying Fortress. They're currently home with the B-1B Lancer and the MQ-9 Reaper. And their mission is combat air power anywhere, anytime. And they do a fine job of that, and we need to support them, so I would ask your yes vote on this.
Are there further remarks from anyone who knows more about that than she does? Representative Lust.
Mr. Speaker, I get up in full support of this bill. As a former member of the Ellsworth Authority, I can attest to the fine work that organization has done. It is held up as a paragon for all bases around the country and how to handle outside the base matters. You know, the authority was created on the heels of Ellsworth being on the BRAC years ago, and it has really done a wonderful job, along with the creation of the enhanced airspace, the MOA up in Northwest South Dakota, Montana, North Dakota. The Ellsworth Authority has been a pivotal part of keeping Ellsworth viable off of future BRAC lists and mission expansion. So this is an artful way to handle this property, both properties, and I would ask your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Luss, for your service on that, too. Any other remarks? Representative Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the sponsor.
State your question.
I'm curious if the state would be also transferring land along with this building, and if so, how much land?
Representative Howard, do you wish to answer the question?
I do.
Go ahead.
There's no land being transferred. It's just a perpetual, well, no, I take that back. The building is being transferred, so I would assume the land that the building sits on would be transferred. So, yes.
Follow-up question?
Yes, Representative Mills.
What's the appraised value of that 100,000 square foot building and the land?
Representative Howard, are you able to answer that question?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Is there a value been appraised of the easement that we would be getting in return for our 100,000 square foot building and land?
I would say that the value is, you can't put a number on it because we're talking about the long-term viability of Ellsworth. So it's absolutely critical that we clear this accident potential zone. So I would say, I don't know that they have put a number on it, but I don't know that you could put a number on it.
Representative Mills, does that answer your question?
It does, Mr. Speaker.
Further remarks?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
You know, I'm not integral to this, this particular issue or this real estate transaction, but I'm always nervous when we're transferring state property. We take things of value. Obviously, a 100,000 square foot building, if we were going to create it today, would be worth millions. And I don't know what the value of that is. I don't know what the value of the easement is that we would be getting in return. So I guess sometimes in these transactions, it's easy to do as a governmental body because we think, we don't think the same as business people do. And so I just want to raise that question. I don't feel like I have enough facts to vote in favor of it. I just wanted to raise that issue for everybody to think about a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks? Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess a question for the sponsor or the good representative from Pennington County. Did I hear the word perpetual easement? Where is that at?
It's not in the actual bill because all this bill does is transfer that property over to Sedita so then they can make the negotiations with this individual. But they will not make this deal with this individual without having a perpetual easement. That's the driver behind this. That is the most critical thing that they want.
Representative May, does that answer your question? All right, thank you. Further remarks? Representative Stevens.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. You know, I'll see how long my voice hangs out here, but you know, in the last couple of weeks we've been dealing with a whole bunch of bills, and we were at one bill we were dealing about $8,000, and another bill we were talking about this little bit amount of money and this little bit amount of money. Then all of a sudden we have this bill in front of us where we're going to transfer a building that we don't know how much land is being transferred. We don't know how much it's worth, and we are not involved in the process at all. And it seems to me that if we're going to be doing that as a state, that we need to have more answers than what we have here today for us to make that kind of decision. So I would encourage you to vote no at this point.
Thank you, Representative Stevens. Further remarks? Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try and give you a little more comfort with this bill, if it will. This is a piece of property that was used by Western Dakota Tech. They do not need it anymore. They built another facility. It is surplus property. There's a couple of tenants in it, but for the most part, the property is sitting unused. And so it's basically an arrangement, an agreement to get this airspace cleared. That is vitally important for the air base, to have this area cleared. And it'll take a few years for all of that to happen. But in the negotiations to do that, this is the mechanism that will allow that to happen. The individual that currently owns that land south of the air base will make a deal with the Ellsworth Authority once we transfer this, the Ellsworth Development Authority, once we transfer this property to them. It's in the state's best interest. We need to get this land area cleared south of the runways. That's the vital concern with the air base being there. So yes, there's a couple of moving parts to this, but the pieces fit together. And I apologize that we didn't put more of a formal presentation together for you. Typically, things like this that deal with Ellsworth and the air base, pretty much everybody's in favor of them, and that's certainly the way we were at the committee level. So rest assured, this is a good bill. It's a good process to help assist the Ellsworth Air Force Base. Please vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lust.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, to lay some of the concerns here, factor in this as well. This is an antiquated building, okay? It's not being used by Western Dakota Tech anymore. It's got maintenance and repair obligations that someone's gonna have to bear, and that's gonna be the state, okay? It needs a lot of repair. So the person who's taking this over can't fit in it in their business that they're proposing. So there are going to be additions and lots of repair as well. So we're avoiding costs for the state. And also, for those who are familiar with like-kind exchanges, it's similar to that. The decrease in value of the land in the APZ is comparable to the value of this building. So while the owner and the person who's part of this transaction retains ownership of that property at the end of the runway, that value of that property has been greatly reduced because there's only certain things that can be done in that property. Can't be residential, can only be certain kinds of commercial, if that. So being in the APZ limits dramatically what they can do with the property. He's basically said, for me to give up that value, I need something similar in exchange, and that's this building, okay? So we get the benefit of giving up a building that is going to have incredible repair and maintenance expense in exchange for getting the APZ the way it needs to be to avoid a future BRAC consideration. So this is a wonderful deal for the state, for Ellsworth, and for, frankly, the economy of Rapid City, to the extent he's going to use this tired building for a new purpose. So I strongly encourage your support for the bill. It truly is a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Representative Roden.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be brief. The Ellsworth lies entirely in District 29, and we live in the shadow of that runway as far as planes going over. But I was pretty involved in the discussion on the BRAC a few years ago, and we all remember that, and we dodged a bullet. It was almost miraculous, the fact that Ellsworth stayed open. So we've been working diligently since then through the authority and through the discussions and through taking steps like we see here today to make sure we're better prepared the next time, so we don't have to rely on a miracle, if you will. And so the authority, I think, has done great things as far as thinking ahead and working through the problem areas. This represents a huge part of the security for the future of Ellsworth. And when we look at it from a business standpoint, that's easy for me to do. This would, if you were running a business and this was the kind of investment that it took relative to the big picture of the possibility of losing Ellsworth in the future and taking steps to secure the future of Ellsworth, this is an easy call. And I understand that the process we go through, sometimes we're not comfortable that we weren't part of the process, or we weren't part of the discussion. Well, we need to inject ourselves into the, if that's our view, we need to take steps to be more proactive prior to the time that it comes to the legislature. Sometimes our hands are tied, and we just need to put on our big boy pants and deal with it when it comes to the legislature. This is the right thing to do for Ellsworth. It's the right thing to do for the state of South Dakota. I urge your support.
Thank you, Representative Roden. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'm not asking you to trust my memory, because that's what I'm going on. But the folks at School and Public Lands said the acreage was approximately 10 acres and the property was worth $2.1 million, if my memory is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Any further remarks before Representative Howard speaks? Representative Stevens.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I don't want anybody to get the ideas that any of us who have spoken against this project is against the, the concept, but I guess the point that I guess I'm trying to make is this, is so far we've heard lots of bills. They've been ripped apart about, you don't have this number and you don't have this, you don't have this, and, we can't trust you, can't trust this agency about them doing this and doing that. Then all of a sudden we get this bill. We got all this, we don't have any answers. Everybody keeps saying, well, yeah, this is a good, even deal, but nobody can say what it's worth. Nobody said one time what it's appraised at. They're not providing us with any numbers. They're basically saying, well, trust us. Well, it hasn't worked any time else so far in this legislative session when we're going through dealing with numbers. And I just think if we're going to apply that process to the bills that we've had before us, when we're talking about $8,000 here and $15,000 there, then I think the public ought to know what the numbers are here. Let's treat everything exactly the same. I'm all for doing the purpose of what that bill is intended to do. And it has nothing about what the size of the pants I'm wearing, okay? It's about knowing numbers. And I haven't heard one person give me one number about any of this. And I think if we're gonna do it one way for other bills, we need to do it the same way with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stevens. Representative Zickman.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, having been the state director for adult vocational and technical education when this building was purchased, I'm pretty well familiar with it because we did a lot of work in it. So my time is going to be short, but I think what the prior testimonials have said, stick with me, we'll get all together. I would believe, I'm familiar with the building myself. I think that it's good for the state. They need to get rid of it. There's repair and maintenance that's on it. Yeah, there's a couple of people or a couple of businesses that are in that building, but the state needs to get rid of that building. It'll be a good move. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zickman. Any further remarks? Any further remarks? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank all the positive testimony from people in favor of this, and I understand the hesitation. I'm going to reiterate, though, that we were on the base closure list at one point in time. So it is very hard to put a dollar amount on this perpetual easement that we will have at the end of this runway. You really cannot put a dollar amount on that. When we're talking, when they decided the upper levels, let's say we have a new aircraft being rolled out, what base are we going to put it at? Well, let's look at Ellsworth. When we can clear this area, and that's another plus in our favor. I mean, we have the Powder River Basin expansion of the airspace a few years ago. That was huge, absolutely huge that we were able to accomplish that. And that is a huge plus in our favor. This will be another huge plus in our favor. And we want those new missions. We want the new aircraft to come to Ellsworth. That's more people coming here. That's more contribution to our economy. So I would urge you to vote yes in favor of this. It's a good bill. I understand the hesitation, though. But I would say you can't put a dollar amount on what we're going to get in return for the dollar that the state paid for this building. We paid $1 for this building. We're going to transfer it over to Sedita, and they're going to make an agreement with this gentleman so we have a perpetual easement. So it's a very good deal for the state.
Thank you, Representative. Hearing no further remarks, the Senate Bill 40, and due to its emergency clause, which is attached, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 40. Those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the members will proceed to vote. And it's a 2/3 vote.
Representative Campbell, May. Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were 62 yeas, 6 nays, and 2 excused.
Senate Bill 40, having received a majority 2/3 vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Are any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct. Representative Qualm.
Mr. Speaker, I move we defer the remainder of the calendar till Wednesday, January 31st, the 14th legislative day.
Representative Qualm's motion is to defer the balance of the calendar. There being a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Motion carries. Are there announcements?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Bartles.
There will be a riveting meeting of retirement laws tomorrow, 15 minutes after the adjournment of the session.
Very good, thank you. Representative Ladderell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House Capitol Commission Bible Study is tonight at 8 p.m. at Perkins. All legislators are invited. We'll be studying the Gospel of John, led by Jarvis Whip.
Thank you very much. Representative Barthel.
House Education will meet at 7:45 tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Representative Roden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House State Affairs tomorrow morning, 7:45.
Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Judiciary, 11 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, 10 o'clock tomorrow.
10 o'clock. Representative Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Commerce and Energy will meet tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. It's going to be the first of several alcohol days at Commerce Committee. We're going to do about 5 bills tomorrow, and we're also going to honor our shooting champ tomorrow, which we'll probably talk about on the floor later. But I'd ask you to all come there and enjoy tomorrow's alcohol day in Commerce. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Allers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appropriations, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we will continue hearing the budget briefings for the Board of Regents.
Further announcements. Representative Heineman.
Yes, Madison will have a reception at the Ramcota. I don't think that's on your social calendar tonight, so about 5 o'clock.
5
Madison,
o'clock.
who's Madison?
Thank you. I think whip groups meet after the session today, too. Any further announcements? Representative Tolson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What type of shoes are we supposed to wear tomorrow?
It's my understanding we're supposed to wear tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes tomorrow. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Representative Tolson. Any further announcements? Representative Beal. Representative. There being a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.